I'll never forget the day I got fired by an HR director who had no idea I was the new billionaire owner of the entire company. She thought I was just another entry-level employee she could crush under her designer heels. What happened next completely changed both our lives forever. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah, and today I'm sharing the most shocking workplace experience that taught me the most valuable lesson about power, respect, and never judging someone by their appearance. This story will make you question everything you think you know about corporate hierarchies and the dangerous assumptions people make every single day. Let me take you back to that life-changing Monday morning that started like any other day but ended with me completely transforming a toxic workplace culture. My name is Sarah Thompson, and at 26 years old, my life took the most unexpected turn imaginable. Just 6 months earlier, I was working as a junior marketing coordinator at a small agency, barely making enough to cover my student loans and rent for my tiny studio apartment. But then something incredible happened that changed my entire world. My grandmother, who I barely knew existed, passed away and left me her entire fortune. She had been secretly building a business empire for decades, and suddenly I found myself the sole heir to Thompson Industries, a massive conglomerate worth over $4 billion. The inheritance included everything from tech companies to real estate developments, and most surprisingly, a majority stake in Pinnacle Corporation, one of the largest consulting firms in the city. The transition from struggling employee to billionaire owner was overwhelming and surreal. My lawyers advised me to keep my new status quiet while I learned about my inherited businesses and decided how to manage them. I wanted to understand each company from the ground up, to see how they really operated when the boss wasn't watching. That's why I decided to go undercover at Pinnacle Corporation as a regular new hire. I deliberately dressed down for my first day, choosing simple black pants, a basic white button-down shirt, and comfortable flats. I carried an old messenger bag instead of an expensive briefcase, and I left all my inherited jewelry locked away in my new penthouse safe. Looking in the mirror that morning, I saw exactly what I wanted to see: a nervous new employee starting her first day at a prestigious company. The Pinnacle Corporation building was a gleaming 40-story tower in the heart of downtown, with marble lobbies, gold-trimmed elevators, and floor-to-ceiling windows that offered breathtaking city views. As I walked through the revolving doors, I felt a mix of pride and anxiety. This was my building now, my company, but nobody knew it except for a handful of lawyers and trustees who had helped arrange my cover story. I had been hired under my maiden name, Sarah Williams, with a completely fabricated resume that showed me as a recent business school graduate looking for her first real corporate job. The HR department had no idea they were interviewing and hiring their actual owner. The irony was both thrilling and terrifying. My first few days at Pinnacle were eye-opening in ways I never expected. I was assigned to the marketing department on the 15th floor, working under a team leader named Marcus, who seemed genuinely kind and dedicated to helping new employees succeed. The other junior staff members were friendly and welcoming, sharing insider tips about navigating office politics and warning me about certain managers to avoid. But it was during my second week that I first encountered Victoria Sterling, the HR director who would soon become the center of the most dramatic workplace confrontation of my life. Victoria was everything you'd expect from someone drunk on corporate power: perfectly styled platinum blonde hair, designer suits that probably cost more than most employees made in a month, and an attitude that made it crystal clear she believed she was superior to everyone around her. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I first witnessed Victoria's toxic behavior during a team meeting where she berated a young intern named Lisa for accidentally scheduling a conference room double booking. Instead of simply fixing the mistake, Victoria spent 15 minutes publicly humiliating Lisa, questioning her competence, and threatening her job security over what was clearly an honest error that could have been resolved in 30 seconds. Watching this display of unnecessary cruelty, I felt my blood pressure rising. This was my company now, and Victoria was creating a hostile work environment that went against everything I believed in. But I forced myself to stay quiet and observe, gathering information about how widespread this behavior was and who else might be involved. Over the following days, I started paying closer attention to Victoria's interactions with different employees. What I discovered was a disturbing pattern of favoritism and discrimination that made my stomach turn. She treated the attractive male employees with flirtatious friendliness, gave preferential treatment to people wearing expensive clothes or carrying designer accessories, and showed open contempt for anyone she perceived as beneath her social status. I watched her dismiss valid concerns from hardworking employees simply because they didn't fit her narrow definition of corporate success. She interrupted people during presentations, rolled her eyes when certain team members spoke, and made snide comments about appearances and backgrounds that bordered on harassment. The breaking point came during my third week when I witnessed Victoria's treatment of James, a brilliant data analyst who happened to be soft-spoken and wore clothes from discount retailers. During a departmental presentation where James was sharing groundbreaking insights that could save the company millions of dollars, Victoria spent the entire time checking her phone, sighing dramatically, and making barely audible comments about his presentation style. When James finished his presentation, instead of acknowledging the value of his work, Victoria stood up and said, "Well, that was certainly thorough, James, but next time maybe try to sound more confident and professional." This was a Fortune 500 company, not a college classroom. The dismissive tone and public embarrassment left James visibly shaken, and I could see other team members looking uncomfortable but too afraid to speak up. That night, I went home to my penthouse and stared out at the city lights, wrestling with my conscience. I had the power to fire Victoria immediately, to end her reign of workplace bullying with a single phone call. But I also knew that understanding the full scope of the problem required more observation. How many other employees were suffering under her toxic leadership? How deeply did this culture of discrimination run throughout the company? I decided to give it one more week, to document everything I was seeing and build a comprehensive case for the changes that needed to happen. I started keeping detailed notes about every interaction I witnessed, every instance of unfair treatment, every moment when Victoria's behavior crossed the line from tough management into workplace harassment. But Victoria had her own plans for me, plans that would accelerate my timeline dramatically and lead to the most shocking confrontation either of us could have imagined. She had been watching me too, and what she saw was a quiet new employee who dressed modestly, spoke softly, and seemed like an easy target for her next power play. I had no idea that my carefully maintained cover was about to be blown apart in the most dramatic way possible, or that Victoria Sterling was about to make the biggest mistake of her entire career. The stage was set for a confrontation that would change everything, not just for us, but for every single employee at Pinnacle Corporation. The morning that everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I arrived at the office early, grabbed my usual coffee from the lobby cafe, and settled in at my small cubicle to review the marketing reports I had been assigned. The sun was streaming through the tall windows, and the office had that quiet, productive energy that I had grown to appreciate during my weeks of undercover observation. But around 10:30, everything took a dramatic turn that would expose Victoria's true nature and set in motion events that neither of us could have predicted. What happened next would shock everyone in the office and teach me the most important lesson about leadership, respect, and the dangerous assumptions people make about power and success. I was quietly working on a presentation about improving customer engagement strategies when I heard Victoria's sharp voice cutting through the office atmosphere like a knife through butter. She was standing near the elevator bank, speaking loudly on her phone about weekend plans at some exclusive country club, making sure everyone could hear about her luxurious lifestyle and important social connections. As I glanced up from my computer screen, I noticed she was staring directly at me with an expression that made my stomach drop. There was something predatory in her eyes, like a hunter who had just spotted the perfect target. She ended her phone call abruptly and began walking toward my cubicle with deliberate, measured steps that seemed designed to draw attention from other employees. The office suddenly felt smaller and more tense as Victoria approached my workspace. Other employees sensed something was about to happen and began stealing glances in our direction while pretending to focus on their own tasks. The energy in the room shifted from productive calm to nervous anticipation, and I could feel my heart rate beginning to accelerate. "Sarah Williams," Victoria said loudly, emphasizing my fake last name with a tone that dripped with condescension. "I need to speak with you immediately. Please gather your personal belongings and follow me to my office." The way she said it made it sound less like a request and more like a command from a judge delivering a sentence. I looked up at her with genuine confusion, trying to maintain my cover as a nervous new employee, while my mind raced through possible reasons for this sudden summons. "Is everything okay, Miss Sterling? Did I do something wrong with the marketing analysis I submitted yesterday?" I asked, keeping my voice small and uncertain, exactly how a worried junior employee would sound. Victoria's laugh was cold and theatrical, loud enough for half the floor to hear our conversation. "Oh, honey, this isn't about your little marketing project. This is about something much more serious than your amateur attempts at business analysis." She paused dramatically, clearly enjoying the attention she was drawing from curious coworkers who were now openly watching our interaction. As we walked toward her corner office, I could feel dozens of pairs of eyes following us down the hallway. Whispered conversations started immediately behind us, with people speculating about what kind of trouble the quiet new girl had gotten herself into. The walk felt endless, like a condemned prisoner being led to execution, and I had to remind myself that I was actually the one with all the power in this situation. Victoria's office was a monument to excess and ego, decorated with expensive artwork, fresh flowers that were probably replaced daily, and photographs of her with various celebrities and politicians at charity galas. Her massive mahogany desk was positioned to intimidate visitors, elevated slightly on a platform that forced people to literally look up at her during conversations. "Please sit down," she said, gesturing to a deliberately uncomfortable chair positioned directly across from her desk. The chair was lower than normal, designed to make visitors feel small and powerless, while Victoria towered above them from her leather executive throne. It was a classic psychological manipulation tactic that revealed everything about her leadership philosophy. I sat down carefully, maintaining my nervous employee persona while internally marveling at the elaborate power games this woman played on a daily basis. The office walls were covered with certificates and awards that seemed designed more for intimidation than actual accomplishment, and I noticed several expensive purses and shoes displayed like trophies of her success. Victoria settled into her chair with the satisfaction of a queen holding court, taking her time to arrange papers and adjust her position for maximum dramatic effect. She was clearly savoring this moment, whatever it was going to be, and I could see the anticipation building in her eyes like storm clouds gathering before a hurricane. "Sarah, I'm going to be direct with you because I believe in honest communication," she began, her voice taking on a fake concern tone that immediately set off alarm bells in my head. "Your performance over the past 3 weeks has been extremely disappointing, and frankly, I'm questioning whether you have what it takes to succeed in a competitive environment like Pinnacle Corporation." The accusation hit me like a physical blow, not because it hurt my feelings, but because it was so completely fabricated. My work had been consistently excellent, earning praise from my direct supervisor Marcus, and contributing valuable insights to multiple projects. This wasn't about performance at all, and we both knew it. "I'm sorry you feel that way, Miss Sterling," I replied carefully, maintaining my cover while fishing for her real motivation. "Could you give me specific examples of where my work hasn't met expectations? I'd really like to improve and learn from any mistakes I've made." Victoria's smile became sharper and more predatory. "Oh, it's not just about your work quality, though that certainly leaves much to be desired. It's about your overall fit with our company culture. You see, Pinnacle Corporation has a certain standard, a certain image that we maintain, and frankly, you don't meet that standard." She gestured dismissively at my outfit, the same professional attire that would be considered appropriate in any normal workplace. "Look at yourself, Sarah. Look at how you present yourself to the world. This is a prestigious consulting firm, not some community college career fair. Our clients expect to see polished, sophisticated professionals, not bargain basement wannabes." The words stung, not because they were true, but because they revealed the depth of Victoria's superficial prejudices. She was literally judging my worth as an employee based on the price tags of my clothing and accessories. It was everything that was wrong with toxic corporate culture condensed into one devastating moment. "I understand the importance of professional appearance," I said quietly, still playing my role as the intimidated employee. "I've always tried to dress appropriately for the office environment. I thought my work quality was what mattered most in a consulting firm." Victoria laughed again, a sound that was becoming increasingly grating to my ears. "Oh, sweet naive Sarah. Work quality matters, yes, but so does understanding your place in the corporate hierarchy. You need to recognize when you're out of your league and have the wisdom to step aside before you embarrass yourself further. She opened a folder on her desk and pulled out what appeared to be a termination letter that had already been prepared. My name was typed at the top in bold letters, and I could see several paragraphs of justification for my dismissal. She had planned this entire confrontation in advance, probably enjoying every moment of anticipation leading up to this meeting. "I'm terminating your employment effective immediately," Victoria announced with obvious satisfaction. "You'll receive 2 weeks severance pay, which is more generous than required given your probationary status. Security will escort you out of the building within the next 30 minutes, and your access cards will be deactivated before you leave this office." The finality of her statement hung in the air like a death sentence. She was clearly expecting me to break down, to beg for my job, to give her the emotional satisfaction of crushing someone she perceived as weak and helpless. Instead, I sat quietly for a moment, processing the magnitude of what had just happened and deciding how to respond. "May I ask what specific performance issues led to this decision?" I asked calmly, still maintaining my cover even though every instinct was screaming at me to reveal the truth and watch her world crumble in real time. "I'd like to understand so I can improve in my next position." Victoria's eyes lit up with malicious glee. "Your next position? Oh, honey, after I'm done with you, there won't be a next position. At least, not at any company that matters. You see, I have connections throughout this industry, and I make sure that problem employees like you don't just move on to create problems somewhere else." She leaned forward across her desk, her voice dropping to what she probably thought was a threatening whisper. "I'm going to personally make sure that every HR director in this city knows exactly why you were terminated. Your career in consulting is over before it even started. Maybe you should consider going back to school or finding something more suited to your, shall we say, limited capabilities." That was the moment I knew Victoria Sterling had gone too far. She wasn't just firing me based on superficial prejudices. She was threatening to destroy my entire future career out of pure spite and cruelty. This wasn't business anymore, it was personal vendetta disguised as corporate decision-making. I reached into my messenger bag and pulled out my phone, scrolling through my contacts to find the number I needed. Victoria watched with growing confusion as I began making a phone call right there in her office, apparently unconcerned about her threats or the termination letter sitting on her desk. "Hi, this is Sarah Thompson," I said clearly into the phone, using my real name for the first time since arriving at Pinnacle Corporation. "I need you to come to the HR director's office immediately. There's been a situation that requires your immediate attention and intervention." Victoria's face went through several rapid changes of expression as she heard me use a different last name than what was in my employment file. Confusion, suspicion, and the first hints of uncertainty began to cloud her previously confident demeanor. "What are you doing?" she demanded. "Who are you calling? You can't just make personal phone calls in my office after being terminated." I ignored her questions and made a second call, this time to my personal attorney who had helped arrange my undercover employment. "This is Sarah. I need you to meet me at Pinnacle Corporation immediately. The cover has been blown, and we need to move to the next phase of the plan." The use of legal terminology in my calm, authoritative tone finally penetrated Victoria's consciousness. Her face began to show the first signs of real concern as she started to realize that something was very wrong with her understanding of the situation. "Sarah Thompson," she repeated slowly, as if testing how the name sounded compared to the Sarah Williams in my employment file. "That's right," I said, finally allowing my voice to take on the confidence and authority that I had been hiding for 3 weeks. "My real name is Sarah Thompson, and there are some things about me that you don't know. Things that are going to change how you view this entire conversation." Victoria's complexion began to pale as she processed the implications of what I was saying. Her hand started trembling slightly as she reached for her computer keyboard, probably to search for information about someone named Sarah Thompson who might be connected to her company. The predatory confidence was rapidly draining from her expression, replaced by growing fear and confusion. "I don't understand what game you think you're playing," she said, but her voice lacked the conviction and authority it had carried just moments before. "You're Sarah Williams, a junior marketing coordinator who was hired 3 weeks ago. I have your resume, your references, your entire employment file. I smiled for the first time since entering her office, and I could see that my calm confidence was making her increasingly nervous. You have a fabricated employment file for a cover identity that I've been using to observe how this company really operates when the owner isn't watching. And what I've seen over the past 3 weeks has been extremely disappointing. The word owner hit Victoria like a lightning bolt. Her face went completely white as the implications began to sink in, and I watched her scramble to access her computer to search for information about Sarah Thompson and Pinnacle Corporation. Her fingers were shaking so badly that she had trouble typing, and I could see sweat beginning to form on her forehead despite the office air conditioning. It took exactly 8 minutes for my attorney to arrive, followed closely by the head of corporate security and the acting CEO, who had been managing daily operations under my grandmother's trust. Victoria spent those 8 minutes in a state of growing panic, frantically searching online and making phone calls to try to understand what was happening to her carefully controlled world. When my legal team walked through her office door, followed by executives she recognized as her superiors, Victoria's face completed its transformation from confident authority to absolute terror. She finally understood that she had just fired and threatened the actual owner of the entire company, and that her career was about to end in the most spectacular fashion imaginable. "Miss Sterling," my attorney said formally, "I'd like you to meet Sarah Thompson, the sole owner of Thompson Industries and majority shareholder of Pinnacle Corporation. I believe you two have just had an interesting conversation about her employment status." Victoria's mouth opened and closed several times without any sound coming out. She looked like a fish gasping for air, completely unable to process the magnitude of what had just happened. The termination letter she had prepared for me was still sitting on her desk, a piece of evidence that would soon become the most ironic document in corporate history. "You can't be," she finally whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're just a junior employee. You dress like, you act like, you're nothing like what an owner should be." Even in her moment of realization, she couldn't let go of her superficial prejudices about appearance and status. I stood up from the uncomfortable chair she had positioned to intimidate visitors and walked around to her side of the massive desk. For the first time in our relationship, I was looking down at her while she looked up at me, a reversal of power that seemed to symbolize everything that was about to change. "That's exactly the problem," I said calmly. "You judged me, just like you've judged countless other employees, based on appearance rather than character or capability. You created a hostile work environment based on superficial prejudices, and you just threatened to destroy someone's career out of pure spite." Victoria fell to her knees right there on the expensive carpet of her corner office, tears streaming down her perfectly made-up face as the full reality of her situation crashed over her like a tsunami. "Please," she begged, her voice breaking with desperation. "I didn't know. I'm so sorry. Please don't fire me. I have a mortgage, car payments, credit card debt. I need this job." For a moment, I felt a flicker of sympathy for her. Then I remembered James, the brilliant analyst she had humiliated. I remembered Lisa, the intern she had berated over a simple scheduling mistake. I remembered every employee I had watched her treat with contempt and cruelty over the past 3 weeks. "You're right," I said quietly. "You didn't know who I was. And that's exactly why this happened. You treated me terribly, not because of anything I did wrong, but because you thought I didn't have the power to fight back. How many other employees have you treated the same way?" My question hung in the air like an accusation, and I could see Victoria struggling to find an answer that might save her career. But we both knew there was no acceptable response to what she had done. No explanation that could justify years of workplace bullying and discrimination disguised as corporate leadership. The consequences of her actions were about to unfold in ways that would change not just her life, but the entire culture of Pinnacle Corporation. What happened next would send shockwaves through the company and teach everyone an unforgettable lesson about respect, dignity, and the true meaning of leadership. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us. Me and everything about her. My value as a person isn't determined by what I wear, what I drive, or where I shop. It's determined by how I treat others and the love I give to the world. David and I decided to use this experience as a teaching moment. We implemented new training programs for all employees at David's properties, focusing on treating every customer with equal respect and dignity. We also established a foundation to support people who face discrimination based on their appearance or economic status. Sometimes the worst moments in our lives become doorways to positive change. Victoria Blackwood thought she could judge my worth based on my clothes and my car. But she learned that day that true worth comes from character, kindness, and how we choose to treat others when we think no one important is watching. The truth is, someone important is always watching. Whether it's the person you're mistreating, the bystanders who witness your behavior, or simply your own conscience, every action has consequences. Victoria learned this lesson the hard way, but it doesn't have to be that way for everyone. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.